Tamitakiapi, Lampetu Washte. I'm Shirley Snavy, and welcome to the ICT Newscast. We begin in Kansas with layoffs at Haskell Indian Nations University. ICT's Kevin Aberesk has this report.
23.8% of our staff got laid off.
Very fast. It's not ideal.
Everybody's kind of shaken up.
Students at Haskell were shocked in mid-February when news broke about the Trump administration's decision to fire all federal probationary employees, including a host of educators at Haskell.
I was at the tutoring table over there, just talking with a couple of friends, and one of our fellow students was like, "Hey, did you hear the news?" And I was like, "No." And he just goes, "Yeah, we lost 35 people." And I'm like, that has to be just a rumor.
It wasn't a rumor. The layoffs hit Haskell as well as Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the only two federally operated tribal colleges in the country. Haskell lost instructors, administrators, coaches, and custodial workers. It was tough on students.
It confused a lot of us and, kind of disrupted our day a little bit, threw everyone off balance. And, it was just a difficult time. It was a time of uncertainty.
But better days may be coming. The Haskell Foundation has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to bridge the federal funding gap, and the Native American Rights Fund has filed a federal lawsuit demanding the Trump administration meet its trust obligations to tribes by restoring the university staff and maintaining the unique place that is Haskell.
Haskell is different because it's all natives here. It's an all-native university, and it's the only one of its kind in the United States.
I feel like everyone's like their own people, but like everyone's from different tribes and stuff. But I feel like we're all a family and we all one.
Here, it's an intertribal, international melting pot for tribes across the United States and Canada. And it's really interesting because each subject that we learn about here and each course that we take intertwines Native culture into the curriculum. And so that helps us get the right tools to become leaders throughout Indian country.
Hopefully for generations to come.
I trust that our leaders here at the university will do the right things to get us back in functioning and, back to what it was before. Haskell's been here for 140 years. It's going to be here for 140 more.
For ICT from Lawrence, Kansas, I'm Kevin Aberesk.
In North Dakota, the Spirit Lake Nation is celebrating land back, the return of land taken 120 years ago. A formal chairman tells us in Dakota what this means.
It's makochig de o kichupi who had tokat oyatiki umpukihipi taku uptegecha ohena koshka dahan wana koshka go wing dana and then makochig he umpukihipi chin makochig he dokid farm up, they chili war that they abstract it tamwamba there and yechukishni. Makochik have farm but the hanwana ukistaku cheap jonana uyu happy. Who had said Makochik had oyati chenana umpe. Who had taku Kawita every chahanaka okihipi. I told her none I picked. I think I'm just going to say that much.
Mino-giizhigad noongom. Mino-giizhigad noongom. It is a good day today. Mino-giizhigad noongom. The word Mino is talking about something that is good, nice, or well. Giizhigad is a word for day, and then noongom means today. So we put all three together, we have Mino-giizhigad noongom. It is a good day today.
There's a new prime minister in Canada. This amidst threats from its closest neighbor. Daniel Herrera reports.
I, Mark Carney, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
Canada has a new prime minister. Mark Carney is the new prime minister of Canada after Justin Trudeau announced his resignation in January. Carney has a history in banking, where he steered the Bank of Canada out of financial crises as its head. He was also the first non-citizen to head the Bank of England. He has no previous political experience. The Liberal Party, which was on track to face a tough loss in the coming election, was reinvigorated by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs and threats of making Canada the 51st state.
And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form.
Carney will face a tough road ahead as he navigates Canada through a trade war with the U.S.
So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
But what are his policies, specifically those around Indigenous communities? Carney set out a plan for the country's future based on economic growth and investment, including some Indigenous-specific promises. Carney's plan committed to ensuring, quote, that reviews are conducted and Indigenous consultations held within clear, predictable, and competitive timelines. He also said his government will embed meaningful reconciliation and partnership with Indigenous communities throughout their economic policy, ensuring that their leadership and perspectives are integral to building a thriving, inclusive economy. He said, Canada will harness its vast capabilities to become a clean energy superpower, supporting projects that protect the environment while honoring the rights and prosperity of Indigenous peoples. Carney also included plans for Indigenous people under the goal of making Canada secure in the North by working closely with Indigenous leadership. The campaign for leadership and the plan for an impending election to deal with the housing crisis includes a commitment to address the housing needs and advance the self-determination of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. When Trudeau resigned in January, he suspended Parliament so that the Liberal Party, which currently controls government, could have a leadership race to find his replacement. Carney will have to win in a federal election against other party candidates to remain as Prime Minister. His main competitor is Conservative candidate Pierre Poilievre. He declined to answer questions about the timing of Canada's next federal election, which is scheduled for October, but hinted he would move quickly to seek, quote, as strong a mandate that is needed for the time. For ICT, Daniel Herrera Carbajal.
A Canadian residential school documentary has made Oscar history. It marks the first time a Native American filmmaker is nominated for an Oscar. Julian Brave NoiseCat's Sugarcane is available on Hulu and Disney+. Take a look.
Wait kochaidab Julian Brave NoiseCat when Chechua so klachmach genel statlam kende tskaschen och dakwin letwed poopsman chochayulchum de Suquamish Uluch. Hi everyone, my name is Julian Brave NoiseCat. I'm Suquamish and Statliunk. My family primarily resides on the Cannon Lake Indian Reserve in what's now British Columbia, Canada, and I live on Suquamish traditional territory in Kitsap County, Washington State.
And congratulations on the Oscar nod.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it was a project that we all felt was very special from the beginning, and to see it celebrated by audiences and the Academy in this way is just a confirmation for us that, you know, we were right in a sense that this was a really special and important story that the world needed to know.
No Other Land was the winner in that category, and I think that would have been a hard one to beat. And hardly anyone has seen that film about Palestine, but you should be very proud of the nomination.
Yeah, have you seen No Other Land? It's a wonderful film. I saw it at the Millennium Docs Against Gravity Film Festival in Warsaw, Poland. It's a very raw and emotional film about a history that is in certain ways very similar to the history that we faced as Indigenous peoples, a history of settlement and unsettlement, of persecution, of land grabs. So yeah, it's a great film, a very important film, and a film that's, you know, of the moment in a way that, of course, films about Indigenous peoples, particularly here in North America, often struggle to be. And you know, we're incredibly proud of the film that we made. We're really incredibly proud of the craft, the filmmaking, the storytelling. And, you know, we were up against two wars in the best documentary category in Palestine as well as Ukraine. And we just really, really think that we made a great film. And also we were the first to stand and clap when No Other Land won.
Well, it must have been meaningful for your crew to be up there, and everybody was probably asking you what you wore. And your dad looked pretty spiffy too.
Yeah, it was really special for us to have our participants. My dad Ed, Archie NoiseCat, my auntie Charlene Bellew, Chief Willie Sellers of the Williams Lake First Nation, with us on the red carpet. We were all representing our people, the Secwepemc people from the interior of British Columbia, Canada, the best way that we could. I was wearing a moose hide vest from Charlene's mom, our late Granny Lizzie. She made it for Charlene, and then Charlene gifted it to me about a year ago. So it's one of my prized possessions and a real family heirloom. Those in our culture, those moose hide vests are usually reserved for chief and council and important people in our community. So the fact that she gave me one is a huge honor. And then I wore some jewelry from close friends and family friends. David Wallace, whose mom Denise Wallace is a really close family friend. Sugpiak jeweler, and then also a piece from Jennifer Younger, who's been an incredibly close supporter of the film and a good friend who I've met through actually writing my book when I was up in Sitka, Alaska. So. It was a really beautiful moment, and we all, of course, wanted to represent Indian country and our people well.
And the book, We Survived the Night, will be out in the fall. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more with us?
Sure. My book, We Survived the Night, will be published by Alfred A. Knopf on October 21st, 2025. It's a work of narrative nonfiction that weaves together a family story with a story about Indigenous peoples across the United States and Canada. It talks about what Indigenous stories are today, why they matter, and how they should be told. At its core, it's a father-son story about myself and my dad, but it's also formally and artistically ambitious in that it's told in the style and tradition of a coyote story, which is a traditional trickster narrative from my own people's culture about this figure called Coyote, who we say was sent to the earth by Creator to set things in order. Other Native nations have a very similar sort of account. And of course, he was a trickster. So while he did a lot of wonderful things, he also messed a lot of stuff up. We also consider Coyote to be one of our first ancestors. So he's kind of our account of why we are the way we are. So through Coyote and the stories about him, I write about myself, my dad, my family, and the Indian world that I've reported on and moved through for my whole life, and how these stories about the trickster still get at a lot of truth about that world, despite the fact that they were nearly, annihilated by colonization and by schools like St. Joseph's Mission, the Indian residential school at the heart of Sugarcane.
I don't want to talk too much about the movie because people should watch it. It's extremely powerful. And as soon as it was over, in tears, I went downstairs and I told my husband how moving it was and how angry it made me.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that this is obviously a very specific story. It's about an investigation at one mission, St. Joseph's Mission near Williams Lake, British Columbia, and about the particular people who survived that residential school. But it's also a story shared by Indigenous peoples all across Canada and the United States who were also taken away to these schools and who also share the intergenerational trauma that was wrought by them. And it's also a universal story. It's a story about family, about our relationships to our ancestors, to our parents. It's a road trip film. It's arguably a Buddy Stoner comedy. So I hope that people can watch it and get a lot out of it, not just about this history and its enduring consequences, but also just some good storytelling and the emotion of something like this.
When President Joe Biden issued the formal apology in Arizona about the boarding school era here, and then a similar story happened a few years before in Canada with the discovery of the graves at Kamloops. I realize that I don't know any Native American who hasn't been influenced or had someone that was part of that boarding school era that has not come away with some sort of trauma. And I think universally, that's one of the messages that this gives is how for generations, really, that has influenced our lives.
It's a foundational part of North American history, and I think that it has been largely erased and forgotten, and it needs to be remembered, not just as an essential part of our story as Indigenous peoples, but part of the story of how this continent was taken and that process of colonization, the effort to eliminate Indigenous cultures, ways of life, ways of governance. This is really fundamental to understanding what happened on this land. And I think that in Canada, there is a process of truth and reconciliation wherein that is beginning to happen. And in the United States, we have a lot of catching up to do.
Well, Julian, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And congratulations on the Oscar.
Kuksjem, Shirley, yeah, just always a pleasure to come talk to Indian Country Today. I did some of my first published writing ever for Indian Country Today. I wrote a column called Powwow Reflections way back in the summer of 2013. It's actually the first time I ever was paid to put words to the page. So it's always a pleasure to come back on and talk to the Kelmuch, the native people all across this land. Kuksjem.
Tribal culture and traditions are being shared with allies in one Montana community. Journalism student Sydney Perkins reports from the ICT Mountain Bureau on how a group of college students share and celebrate culture.
Indigenous students at the University of Montana share their culture through an event celebrating tribal people from across North America. Student organizer O'Shea Burning Ground of the Crow Nation says their group invited the community to the round dance and drum circle, art show, and feed.
It's trying to bring the community together and trying to acknowledge that, our traditions are still here and that no matter where we are, no matter what happens in this world, that we'll always be here. And round dance is just a way of us expressing that.
Burning Ground says the round dance tradition originated with the Cree people.
It's certainly a display of culture from not only Cree nations, but for all Indigenous people.
Burning Ground says these social and spiritual gatherings follow the natural cycle of the seasons, as certain traditions are tied to specific times of the year.
There's a certain time of the year where certain things can happen. And for the round dance, that's from the first snowfall to the first thunder.
Burning Ground says these events have been getting more popular each year.
It really does bring the community together. I mean, this is the second year that we've done this, and every time we manage to pack this place out with people. So I think we're doing a good job with how we're setting things up.
The students will continue to organize events sharing tribal culture and tradition with the wider Montana community. Reporting from the homelands of the Salish, Calypse, and Kasanka people, I'm Sydney Perkins from the School of Journalism at the University of Montana.
An Alabama tribe is stepping up for food sovereignty, and not just for the tribe, but for neighboring communities. Take a look. The Poarch Band of Creek Indians has been herding cattle for decades, and its new endeavor brings it closer to food sovereignty and food security. Perdido River Meats had its ribbon cutting February 6th. Jose Antillon is its general manager.
So the tribe has an agriculture farm here, which is an extension of the Poarch Creek Indians Reservation. And the farm has been here for many years, 30, 40 years, and they've been raising cattle and steers. And then they were selling the steers to the public here, the community. And then about 5, 6 years ago, decided to start sending steers to a processing facility in Mississippi, and it started providing all those cuts, beef cuts, to the community and the tribal members. And the tribe seeing the necessity of continue the service to the community and tribal members to ensure the food sustainability, and then ensure that we do have a good farm to fork process to have all of that aspects around our facility here in the community. It's a community service from the Creek Indians.
With public and private funding, the meat processing plant serves the surrounding community.
We're vertically integrated. That means that we have our own steers and we bring them here. But not only that, as I mentioned before, the tribe has a great opportunity to service the community, and it's something that we do very well.
So with that service, we're providing that processing here for the farmers and ranchers around that area, so they can bring their steer, we can process it for them, take it, or at the same time, we can get our USDA to inspect their steers and they can sell it to the public if that's what they desire to do.
Perdido River's current farm operations manages more than 700 cows and 35 bulls on 2,900 acres.
This facility, once we're up and running at full capacity, has the ability to process 25 head per day. 125 head a week. So we're very small if we compare ourselves to the big competitors on the out west, but this facility is the biggest one on the state of Alabama. So it's something we're very proud of doing here, and very proud to participate into that aspect. So we're not competing with the big fish. We're not competing with the big guys on the market. So we own our own steers, so we're not on the steer market. But at the same time, it's something that the community needed here. They want to know where the food is coming from. They want to know that we're sustainable, and they want to know anything about hormones and antibiotics is something we don't use in our cattle here. So we're not competing to the retail stores. We are providing a service to the community and the farmers around that area.
For ICT, I'm Shirley Snavy.
He aliʻi ka ʻāina, he kauwā ke kanaka. He aliʻi ka ʻāina, he kauwā ke kanaka. The land is chief, man is her servant. He aliʻi ka ʻāina, he kauwā ke kanaka. Our land is both a responsibility and a privilege.
A famous pop-up restaurant is now brick and mortar in Portland, Oregon. Our friends at Underscore take us there.
First foods really deserve their spotlight. It doesn't get enough credit for the value it brings to the earth, really. I am Chef Alexa Numkena-Anderson, and we are in my new restaurant today called Javelina. Javelina was a pop-up that we've been doing for this past year, and I have been making a combination of Native American comfort foods, so stuff that you'd be finding at powwows. People really love the fry bread, so I wanted to give the people what they want. But then also really making dishes utilizing first foods. I want people to come into this and feel like this is their space too. So I'm trying to showcase it like with everything from the art on the walls to the blanket on the bench. There's just so many little things that I want people to feel familiar in this space. There's been so much support, and every time I think about it, it makes me very emotional, especially from the Native community. Like, we would not be where we're at without the Native community here in Portland and even in surrounding areas.
I've attended with my partner and friends various events that they've done around town. It's been exciting to watch as they've expanded their menu from the original powwow comfort food at those events into the various pop-ups that they produce. Now moving into this brick and mortar space, everything about their food has been great. Every time I've eaten it, and this was no exception.
Javelina has been this beautiful recognized brand for this past year. We started off doing like powwow comfort foods, but I didn't think it really captured what everything it was that I wanted to do. So we've switched it to Indigenous dining to just really represent an Indigenous person. For this menu, I am coming at you with the fry bread because people demand the fry bread. I will accommodate. But then I have like our bison chili. Bison's better for you. I have this really awesome rabbit and like fire roasted chili stew that I'm making. That really reminds me of my grandma.
Just so prideful for me to hear about the amazing work that they're doing and continue to do. And just inside reading the menu, my mouth was just drooling because it's our native foods on a menu. I'm not going to the store, I'm not making it at home myself. It's a restaurant and it's here finally, and I am so stoked.
I'm trying to incorporate all of these like first foods, but speckled into something that's highly approachable. For me, I'm doing this for like my daughter. I want her to grow up in a world where first foods are accessible to her. I want her to be able to go down to the corner restaurant and be like, I'm eating my people's food. The fact that we can't just do that blows my mind. So as hard as it's been, as exhausting as it's been, it's all for our people. I want people to try these things. I've noticed there's been times where people are like, that haven't grown up with these items, are like, what is that? I'm like, try it. It tastes kind of like braised beef. It's delicious. They're like, are you sure? I'm sure. I wouldn't serve you something that tastes bad. These dishes I am making are like really for the Native community. It's to represent Native people, Indigenous peoples. We are these people that are in the city, and then we're these people that will end up at the longhouse. And so sometimes that means fry bread, and then sometimes that means some rabbit and wild rice. I think one of the things that people say to me, not very often, but they're like, fry bread isn't Native. And I'm like, yes, they are not Indigenous ingredients, but it's still a part of the culture. I think that's really important for recognition and for healing. I can't ignore what history has provided for our people. I can just embrace all of it and move forward with pride and what we're able to make out of nothing.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.